Hi, welcome to this week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. I'm so excited. I've got some old favorites and some new faces this week. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having us.
So we've got April Moran, Fil Reid, C.H. Admirand, and Mihwa Lee. And we're going to go ahead and start, since it's a full week, we'll start in release order, which means we're going to start with Phil's book, which is The Duchess of Mystery, and it's book 3 in the Mismatched Lovers series. Is that right, Phil?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell us about it? I'm so glad I remember the series name right. So.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a mystery, as you can tell by the title. It's a bit of a whodunit, or kind of a did she do it?
Fun. Yeah.
It's about a young woman who has, for 10 years, been married to a duke. He was the Duke of Stourbridge, and he dies in mysterious circumstances. She was the daughter of a rich, well, basically he's a tradesman, so she was considered not really acceptable in London society, but because she was very, very rich and he was a terrible gambler, he married her, and he managed to extract from her father, who was very, very keen for his daughter to become a duchess, that if he died, all the money that should have been hers would go to the duke. So he dies, she's left with. Yeah, he's very manipulative, and he played. The father died very quickly after he made this will, specifying that the duke would get the money. A bit suspicious. You never actually find out about that. And 10 years later, the duke dies. She's been married to him for 10 years, and he was absolutely awful to her. When he married her, she was just an 18-year-old. She was very, very naive. Thought he made her love him. She thought she was in love with him, and he turned out to be a total. Well, I could say he's really awful.
Extra scoundrelly.
Treated her dreadfully. In fact, even went so far as to cause her to have a miscarriage, and then didn't care because it was a baby girl. Anyway, so he's been terrible to her, and she's been, because of this, she's been not much her personality, but her outlook has been twisted by the way he has treated her. So she's kind of, when I was writing it, I was thinking she's a little bit Scarlett O'Hara, because she's quite bitchy about the women in society who were nasty to her when she was debutante, looked down their noses at her. And because she's tried to get revenge on them, she tends to flirt with their husbands and their sons and takes pleasure from this. So she's very Scarlett O'Hara. It's quite funny because I was reading the reviews today, because my book's out, and one of them said, she's a bit like Scarlett O'Hara. And I thought, well, yes, you're right. That's why I wrote her like that.
That's perfect.
So she's also very beautiful, but she harbours grudges. She's definitely a grudge harbourer. So I'm looking at my notes. Anyway, the Duke is dead, but when the Duke was a boy, living in Stourbridge, he's the Duke of Stourbridge. His father was the Duke, obviously, before him. His cousin, there were two brothers. The Duke and his brother fell out. And the brother and his wife have died. So this little 6-year-old boy comes to stay at Stourbridge Castle. And the horrible Duke, who was then only the son, is 3 or 4 years older than him and bullies him. He's absolutely terrible to him. So this is the hero. Richard is the poor bullied cousin. So when he's 15, he persuades his grandmother, who's very fond of him, to buy him a commission in the army. And she talks to the Duke, the father of the horrible one, and this happens. So he goes off, and he's been gone. And for 20 years, he's in his 30s. Meanwhile, the horrible Duke has inherited, married this poor girl, Isabella. And this is the heir. So he is in the Rifle Brigade. I love that, because I love doing the research about the army and with the different regiments. So I did loads of research for a very small part of the book. It's just the first chapter. Do you meet him when he is a major in the 95th Rifles? So I found where they needed to be. I found out all the correct commanding officers, and he is under the command of Sir Arthur Wellesley, who becomes the Duke of Wellington. So of course I had to make sure I didn't call him the Duke, because he wasn't the Duke then. And they get arrested then that cousin Marcus, the original Duke, has died, and that he has to go back. And Sir Arthur Wellesley says, you have to go back because, you know, the Dukes, the nobility, because I think he's the brother of the, well, I think what his brother's nobility. He was a younger son, and he was made the Duke of Wellington. Anyway, so he's very, very keen on the fact that he should go back and take up the dukedom, and provide himself with a wife and an heir before he's allowed to come back to the army. Because he loves the army, it's been his life for nearly 20 years. So he rather reluctantly agrees to go back to England, and he arrives back at Stourbridge Castle with what has been his manservant in the army. So he's a rather rough and ready chap who's going to be his valet. And Isabella takes him for a byblow of the previous Duke, not her husband, but the father, because he looks so much like her hated husband. So she meets him in the stables, and she's really very rude to him.
Oh, goodness.
And she takes against him from the start. No, she changes her mind quite quickly. But because he looks so much like his cousin, who she hated and was absolutely terrified of, but who she was determined not to be downtrodden by. So she's a very determined young lady, but she can't.
We love those.
She can't bring herself to like him because he looks so much like her dead husband, and so she has this big wall between her and him, which has to be taken down. But then the spectre of suspicion on her arises again, and
because we have a dead Duke and we don't know why.
No, we don't. And Richard tries to find out, but nobody will tell him. And he realizes that everybody in the castle, it's a big castle, they don't want to tell him. It's not a proper castle, it's a stately home called a castle. Everybody knows something and nobody will tell him. Not everybody knows everything, but there are certain people who do know everything. And it takes him a very long time to work out, I mean, for someone to actually confess to him. So that's basically the story. So,
oh, goodness. Yes, well, it sounds very exciting, and I'm glad that the Duke got what he deserved in the end. So.
Quite fun because when I was very young, about 20, so it's a long time ago now, I worked at Highclere Stud, which is the stud that's attached to Highclere Castle, which is where Downton Abbey was filmed. So because I've been there so many times, I imagined that as the grounds and the castle. So it was really good fun using that in my book. So that was quite good fun doing that.
Very fun. Very fun. How many more are in the series, Phil?
I'm working on number 4 at the moment, which I'm trying hard not to talk about tonight by mistake, because it's in my head. And I've got 4 more after that at the moment.
Oh, great. So we can stay in the world for a long time. I love that.
I could probably keep going like CH has, because she's written her series. I think you're on number 15, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah, the series. But that's not the book we're talking about today.
No.
The book we're talking about is Lion's Promise.
I hope I can read and talk at the same time. But this is a character that readers met in the first Dragonblade book that I wrote, The Mending the Duke's Pride. He's a Bow Street runner. His name is Gavin King. He's grumpy, he's stoic, and he's hard-headed. Those are his best qualities. But because he's really good at his job and he ferrets out information that he needs and he brings the criminals to justice. So, but his life irrevocably changes the night he meets Lady Montfort. She comes to Bow Street. She has a sealed missive in her hand and is to be delivered to him in person. So he reads it, and as he's reading it, he tries not to show what he's thinking because it's from her fiance, Lord Hughes. If anything happens to me, this is the name of the man that you have to look at who will have murdered me. So he goes and she's like, can't you tell me what it says? And he said, I promise.
Apparently not.
Exactly. He said, I can't divulge what's in here. But she said, well, you will find Lord Hughes. And he says, I will find him. He never promises that he's going to be alive when he finds him. But unfortunately for Lord Hughes, he's stuffed in a sea chest when he's found. So, yes, there's a bad guy here who somehow, because of his connections with Prinny, manages to skate by, and he still hasn't been prosecuted yet. But anyway, but he goes back and he tells Lady Montfort, that, yes, I found him, and she's so excited. He's like, I'm sorry, but, he's no longer alive. And
He doesn't tell her about the sea chest thing.
no,
Right?
no,
He
he
says
wasn't.
it.
Yeah, no. I guess he figured that would be a little too much. But he remembers her, and there's just something about her that just, hits him inside. He never reacts to any other person this way, but she pulls something out of him, like a depth of emotion, compassion, and
Oh.
he's a different person because of meeting her. So he
She's
decides
beauty to his beast.
well, can't always be a beast, all your life. Sometimes, there's one person and she's his one person. So he has his men kind of watch over her for the next couple of months because, he's afraid that something, because the murderer is still not behind bars. So he's, has his people watching her. So apparently he gets a note from his good friend, Mrs. Bessie Dove Lyons, from the Lion's Den, and says Lady Montfort's fortune is apparently it's gone. She's ruined. There's all these salacious rumors going on about her, and she's even in White's betting book. And he's like furious. So he leaves Bow Street. He goes to meet Bessie, and she's like, "Oh, I guess you want to talk about her. Maybe there's something going on here." So he demands, take her off. You have to avoid her contract. And she's like, "I'm sorry, I can't do that," because she has plans for him. So he enters the Lion's Den, and it's not going to be the first time. He's going to go back the next night. And so there's things that he has to do, and I can't divulge them because I like to have like challenges for the heroes. And instead of just, like playing cards or whatever, they all have to do something. So this one's, well, it's interesting. I'll just say that. And I had one reviewer say, I was kind of like, yeah, I didn't really like that. I'm like, sorry, it can't be for everybody, but she's good things. What's that?
I do like when they have to work for it.
They do, but he doesn't have to climb a rope across the alleyway like, Lord Alec had to do, but that's another story. But the interesting part about this is he discovers that she was married to her husband for 2 years. She's been a widow for a decade, and her husband's solicitors have been manipulating her funds for the last 10 years so that she has no funds. So apparently things are going to be discovered, and of course he's going to make everything right, but she had no idea she was being ruined by her husband's solicitors. So he's got a lot of things on his plate that he has to figure out. But anyway, so that's all I could remember to write down because my mind is in another book right now. Sorry.
Well, that sounds like very much fun, and we love a good Lion's Den book. It's like Lion's Den books are just universally beloved. So
yeah, it's fun to write.
And you're doing the next book you're working on is the Duke's Guard book.
Yep, it's number 15 out of 16. And I'm kind of stressing because I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be over.
Yeah, there's a lot to wrap up there.
Yeah, so anyway.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, the next book that came out this week is April's book, and it's The Redemption of a Raquel, and you have to tell me what a Raquel is. And it's book 1 in the Raquels of Mayfair.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that one?
So my Raquels are just complete scoundrels. It's 3 best friends. And they've all made a pact with each other to remain bachelors, no matter what their fathers might say or their families. So my first book is Lucien and Charlotte. Charlotte is the daughter of a deceased vicar, and Lucien's father has demanded that he leave the pleasures and temptations of London, go to his country estate, which has been neglected, and help select a new vicar. And he employs Charlotte as his guide in selecting a vicar because apparently a Raquel is not the best person to choose somebody in a religious profession. So he kind of blackmails her into it because she has been living in the vicar's cottage for a year without payment for this vicar's cottage. So he basically says, if you will help me, I'll forgive that debt. So I already had somebody tell me, "Oh my gosh, he's awful. He's terrible. He's a user, blackmailer." But I'm like, he's a bad boy. So
Well,
this
he's
is
going to
what,
circle around to be nice to her eventually,
yes,
as long as.
and he does. He's so set on not marrying because his father has also demanded that he marry, find a suitable woman after he takes care of this problem at their, the country estate that's been neglected. But there's something about Charlotte. She's very independent. She's taking care of herself and her younger sister. And she does odd jobs around the village to, make ends meet. She's got, little tutoring jobs that she does for children that are in the village. And she has determined that he's not going to sucker her in to his little games because she thinks he's just toying with her because she's, a distraction to be out in the country. She's the next available woman that he can toy with. But of course, he begins to fall in love and he can't understand it because he's a Raquel and he's determined to remain a bachelor. But they decide on a new vicar who is infatuated with Charlotte and wants her to become his wife.
Ooh, we got a triangle.
Yes, which of course pushes our Raquel Lucian into a very difficult decision to make. Does he let her go, or does he try to convince her to become a mistress? And she's not having anything to do with that.
That's not the right answer.
That is not. She has nothing to do with that. So she basically puts her foot down and is like, "No, I'm not doing that. You can ask me all you want to," but then he eventually comes to the realization, I love her. I can't let her go. I can't let her marry the new vicar. So I'm going to have to put myself out there. And that's basically kind of sort of what he does. So, but then, book 2, which is what I'm writing right now, is the next Raquel. And then book 3, of course, is the third Raquel. And he's the worst of the bunch. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But
I love it when they fall first. So.
Do what? I'm sorry.
I love it when the men fall first.
Yes.
Like women are like, I don't know if this is what I want. And the men are like, but really?
Yes. My men all fall first. Now they are bad boys. They're scoundrels, but they all have that innate goodness within them to where they just needed the right woman to bring it out and make them realize, hey, it's not going to be so much fun to be a bachelor whenever I'm old and gray and I don't have anybody to share my life with. So they all fall, of course, but they're and these books are steamy. So I write
with flames.
It's the flame line, yes. So my books have a lot of steam in them. And there's a lot of stuff going on before they actually exchange vows, but it's all fun stuff.
Oh, good. Well, it sounds like so fun. And I love a good he falls first. I am all about the,
Yes. He falls first and cannot understand what's going on. He's completely bewildered by it. So
that's fantastic.
It's fun to watch him transform from dedicated Raquel, scoundrel, rogue, doing his thing, gambling, drinking, women, until all of a sudden this little vicar's daughter is like, "Oh, fall in love with me and I'll make your dreams come true."
Well, that sounds like a great ride. So
yes, It's a lot of fun. It's been fun to write. So lots of fun.
Awesome. Well, the last book that came out this week is Mihwa's book, and it is Touched by a Traitor. So we have to figure out who the traitor is and who's doing the touching. And it's book 1 in the Daring Damsel series.
Lots of touching, lots of betraying.
It's flame too, right?
Yes, it's flame. Yeah. So open door, steamy scenes. April makes the vicar's daughter sounds so innocent, but knowing her and her books, she's nothing like what she sounds. She's gonna be very, very, she's a bad girl, right? Naughty girl.
She has a streak of badness within her, that's for sure.
Yeah, which is great. I love those heroines. My heroine, her name is Charlotte as well. And she wants to become a barrister when that was an impossible dream
Oh, wow.
back then.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
We've never had somebody talk about their heroine wanting to become a barrister before. This is very cool.
Yes, I mean, it just came from the historical, events where people have been identified as women after they lived as men for such a long time. They were military generals, they were warriors, or they were physicians. And after their death or during autopsy, they're discovered as women. So I thought, well, what are the chances that a woman might have dressed as a man and went to the law school and became a barrister? So
Oh, wow.
Charlotte is trying to raise funds. She was scrubbing the floors at a brothel, and her love interest, eventually, the betrayer, the traitor, Andrew, was raised by a madam in the brothel. So he clawed his way up from being a dog worker and eventually owns the company and eventually becomes an earl through his war efforts. Now, she is the daughter of a viscount, but her mother was she was mentally ill. So her father tried to protect her mother by spending all their money on keeping her at home. And eventually they both pass away, and Charlotte sees the injustice done to people of unfortunate circumstances, and she wants to riot against a society that treats bad luck as crimes.
Yeah.
So that's where she comes from. So she wants to raise funds, and so she offers Andrew her virginity in return for the funds. But then again, they realize that they're very much alike together, and then they talk a lot, and it's like, well, I need a wife who can sort of exist between the two societies. He's very wealthy, but he's not a nobleman yet, and he doesn't know how to speak like a gentleman, and he doesn't even like wearing gloves. And she's like, well, yeah, I would love to. Why not? That's my dream come true, but you have to let me study law still because I'm not, I have too much to give to the world. And and I want to help the poor people with my skills. And he's like, oh, there's no way, I can't wait because he's horny. He's got to get laid. He can't wait 4 years. He can't wait 4 years to get laid. So she's like, okay, well, I'm sorry then, I can't marry you then. He says, okay, fine, then I'll, fund your education. Good luck. And they go off on their way. And then they meet 6 years later where she has become a barrister. And it was a big scandal when it was found out that she was a female. And Andrew is one of the honorary bench members. So he gets to vote. He has a vote on, who gets to stay, who gets called to the bar and who gets to stay, and etc. And of course, there are evil forces that are trying to push her out because they don't want her to practice. It's it's a man's territory. But she has a backer, a very good friend who's a duke, very closely related to the king. So that's how she gets through. So it was a lot of kind of, how much can I get away with scenario in the story. It's like, I know it's historically very unlikely, but, what can I kind of play around with to make this even remotely feasible? And Andrew has a sister who studied to be a physician, but he won't let her practice because he wants that to be her husband's kind of responsibility because he wants her married first, right? So really, it's a story about, when they meet later, sparks fly. They are still infatuated with each other, but they both, claw their way up to be where they are. So they refuse to compromise.
Yeah.
He doesn't want his investors dropping out, so he wants her to quit her job. Well, she wants him to accept her as she is, including the law practice. And eventually, Andrew forces her hand. I never know how much to give away, like what's fuller, what's not.
Oh, that's
Anyways, he forces her hand. And she's resentful because she could have married her friend who would have accepted her and who would have had, more authority to protect her and protect her law practice. So she's really peeved about it. But he, Andrew is a very jealous and touch or die kind of guy, and that's one of the tropes. And there's some really tender moments. So when he loves so purely, so perfectly. In fact, I made a list of everything he does and gave it to my husband and said, this is the 10 Commandments. I have it all written down. I have it posted up. I emailed it. I texted it. Hello. He's done one out of 10. So there's hope.
I told my sons, it's just not hard to figure out what women want. You just have to read. We write it down. We put it right out there. And it's just not complicated,
Yeah, exactly. How to woo a woman for idiots.
Yes,
The guy, right?
It's not
I know,
difficult.
it's
You might not want to do it, but it's not difficult.
How many men read romance novels and find out what we really want, though? I don't think they do they?
Yeah.
Not many, but
True.
I did manage to date a few, and you can tell.
They skip to the steamy scenes.
Well, we're pretty good at that too, but it's like that.
Yeah.
Just
So,
I write all the bad boys, but my husband is the biggest teddy bear. I swear.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
He is such a teddy bear.
I'll write them, but I don't want to marry one for sure.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's the same
so
thing
I mean,
tracks. So.
Yeah, I love this story because of how stubborn and committed they are. But Andrew grovels on his knees until they bleed in the end. So I hope he gets what he deserved, and then they find their HEA. But Andrew has a group of friends that appear, and I love to have comic relief when you're dealing with a lot of intense emotions. And I cry in every book that I write. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I have a good cry. Now I gotta put a comedy in, So that's what I did with his friends. And, his friends are the type of guys who go, oh, you fell over? Ha ha ha, that's funny. Somebody broke your heart. Well, I'm glad it wasn't me. They'll just laugh at him instead of being real, because that's what men do. So I have, Lancaster's story in book 2 and Hereford's story in book 3, and it's called The Daring Damsels, and I have written 3 so far. But number 2 is I'm most nervous about it because it was my most ambitious book. It has layers and layers and layers of things happening, and it all happens between 2 people. I don't even have side plots. It's just those 2.
Oh, wow.
So I create a huge mess, and then I had to sort it out. So readers might have to do the same. They have to, sort out this chaos in their heads. So good luck.
And there are 3 books in this series?
Yes, there are 3 so far, The Daring Damsels. Yeah, so the second one I have actually in that time period in the 30s, I was lucky because one of the Bronte sisters was just getting started. Dickens was big, and Wordsworth was big. So I included all those as real characters that contribute to the story. So it was fun researching all those authors and their idiosyncrasies.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Well, there's so many good books to read this week. I'm so excited. I always love hearing about your stories, and this week is absolutely no exception. So, ladies, it was delightful to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us this week. I'll make sure I pop the links to the books in the comments so you can grab them if you don't have them already. Dragonblade books are their best deal on pre-order and release, so you want to grab them then. If you don't, you can always read in Kindle Unlimited. So, all right. Ladies, thanks again for taking the time.
Well, congratulations on your release, Phil.
Thanks.
And soon, CH.
Sounds good.